All right, so we're going to be talking about Sidney Burbank and the regulars here for a moment. We're going to talk about the 5th New Hampshire a little bit later, but which is the monument I'm holding right now. But this is kind of late in the Wheatfield fight. The 2nd Brigade of the 2nd Division of the 5th Corps under Sidney Burbank. He was actually, just to give you an idea of how old he was actually a West Point classmate of Robert E. Lee. And so, you know, promotion in the regular army is very slow. By this point, he's still just a colonel. But it's a colonel in the regular army, not the volunteer army, but the regular army. They come into this fight because they've been called into this by Caldwell's division, who the 5th New Hampshire is a part of. Caldwell's been looking for help, and Romaine Ayres' division has been hanging out over here in the Valley of Death, and they're kind of more nearer to it, and so Caldwell finds them and asks for help. Ayres is eventually going to push forward 2 of his regular brigades, the 2nd Brigade and the 1st Brigade. The 1st Brigade never gets past basically where those monuments are right there under Hannibal Date, but the 2nd Brigade wheels, and what's wheeling is basically you're turning into the Wheatfield to connect with Schweitzer's men down there in the Wheatfield. The problem is that Schweitzer's men are getting crushed by just a semicircle of Confederates. They're just coming in from all directions. So Schweitzer's men are trying to get out as best they can. Burbank's brigade, in essence, realizes, oh boy, this is not a good place to be. So while Schweitzer's men get out as best they could, basically the best way of saying, get your stuff and get out of here and can run, just get out as best you can, the regulars instead form up and withdraw in good order out of the Wheatfield, taking casualties as they go. A volunteer soldier who's watching them from a New York regiment up there on Little Round Top will say later, for 2 years, the regulars taught us how to be soldiers. At the Wheatfield at Gettysburg, the regulars taught us how to die like soldiers.
Wow.
And so these guys will withdraw. Their fight probably lasted no more than 20 or 30 minutes. They brought 900 men into this fight. They would lose 447. The regulars are an interesting group. If you come over here, if you see the 7th, which is 4 companies, this is what you'll see that's indicative of regular monuments at Gettysburg. These were placed by the War Department in the 20th century. And where you see, like over here with the bucktails, the 13th Pennsylvania Reserve, that's a volunteer regiment. That means these are men who came from civilian life, who signed up for a term of service, and when it was done, they would be mustered out and they'd go home. Usually these men would form volunteer, basically veterans organizations, and that's who you see placing these monuments throughout Gettysburg. And these ornate monuments belong to those volunteer regiments. Now the volunteers signed up for that term of service. If the war ended before the term of service ended up for them, they got to go home. If the war was still going on and the term of service ended, they got to go home. The regulars, on the other hand, this was their job. They signed, say, for like a 3-year term of service. They're serving that 3-year term of service regardless if the war's going on or not. So this is their job. But they don't have veterans organizations like the volunteer regiments do. So they don't have people representing them and placing monuments on the battlefield. So what you have is, for the regulars, either artillery, cavalry, or infantry, you're going to see a slab like this for those commands with the crest of the United States and a detailed description of what that regiment did, or that battery. For the most part, after the fight in the Wheatfield, their battle here is done. They're not going to be involved in anything else. Their war is not done yet. They will go through the campaigns of '64, but they'll be much depleted. As you can imagine, not many people are in the middle of massive bloody civil war where hundreds of thousands of people are dying. People aren't exactly flocking to join the army. And so their numbers are going to really deplete throughout '63 and '64. And it's going to be, by that time, it's a mere shadow of what they had been. But through many of the early conflicts of the Eastern Theater, the regulars were seen as kind of the gold standard. They were the ones who provide that example of discipline and fighting ability. And so in the end, what that soldier said was true. For 2 years, these guys taught them how to be soldiers. And so in essence, that's the mark they leave. The first time I came here to Gettysburg, I would look at an ornate statue like the bucktails over here, and I would look at something like this and I would be kind of offended that the regulars didn't have something ornate for them as well. Well, they do. It's a big obelisk over there on Cemetery Ridge. But these guys, I thought, man, they're getting a raw deal. And I thought about some more. What were the regulars? They were professionals. They did their job. They weren't flashy. They did it well. Could you think of a not more appropriate monument than this? It's basic, it's uniform. It gives you all the information you need to know. And there you go. I can't think of a more fitting monument for the regulars than something like this. Because that's who they were. They didn't put feathers in their cap. They didn't wear baggy pants. These guys were the professionals. And for me, I think that's absolutely valuable. I think this is an appropriate representation of what should be, as opposed to something like that for the regular units. So yeah, so that's my talking about Sidney Burbank and his boys.
That's incredible. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.